Welcome to Invictus Porsche for a review of this Porsche 911 997 Gen 1 Carrera S. When they introduced the 997 in 2004, I mean, it's been roughly 40 years since they've been producing 911s. And what Porsche does extremely well is to continue to produce car after a car that has slowly evolved and improved both technically, performance-wise as well, and from a safety perspective. Here we are in the 997, and I mean pretty much 15 years later, reviewing it and telling you what it's like, and in some ways why it's a modern classic and why the characteristics of the 997s are what makes it so appealing for so many people to buy. Number one, I'm going to start the car, and it's always important to wait 6 seconds for the engine to start. Obviously, the 997 Gen 1 had the indirect fuel injected engines. And again, some people might prefer the 997 Gen 2 engine, which is the direct fuel injected engine, over the Gen 1 engine. And that's pretty much down to the fact that people argue that the Gen 2 direct fuel injected engines are more reliable. As a matter of fact, it has got nothing to do with them being indirect or direct fuel injected engines, purely because Bosch were the sort of brains behind the indirect fuel injected engines, and these were being produced as early of 1970s. So why all of a sudden are these engines being talked as quite bad as of 2000 and as of actually 1998, when they were introduced in the 996? Well, a big part of it pins down to the fact that in 1998 the 996 went to water-cooled engines. Whereas prior to that, they were air-cooled. So the water-cooled engine obviously required a lot of coolant piping from all the way from the front of the car going to the back of the vehicle. And that meant that over time, these coolant pipes can become corroded and they can leak and just cause inefficient cooling to the back of the engine, which means that the engine at the back is not getting the cooling that it's meant to get, and therefore it's having to overwork itself, and over a short period of time you could potentially have some degree of scoring, and that could generally become a lot worse than you would expect, purely because you are not actually taking care of it as you should. Now I want to focus on this 911, this 997 Gen 1 Carrera S. What is it that makes it special? What is it that makes it, appealing? Well, obviously the 997 were the return back to the oval shaped headlights, as well as having separate indicators on the side, and it kind of evokes back the look of what the earlier 911s were meant to look like, which is why the predecessor 996 picked up such a bad reputation. Well, this 911 is a late 2006 car. It has got an upgraded RMS bearing, it's been Borescoring, and it's had an over rev, and it hasn't got any skeletons in the closet. And you could confidently buy this 997. From a spec point of view, on the exterior, it's in the Arctic silver metallic color. It's complemented by the 19-inch lobster claws alloys, and it's got the xenon headlights with headlamp washers as well as having the fog lights, which have been upgraded to LED, including the side indicator lights and also the rear lights. The rest of the spec is pretty standard. It's got PASM, the Porsche Active Suspension Management System, which comes in as standard with the S. So the car already from factory comes 10mm lowered. By pressing PASM, it activates and stiffens the dampers, and that just gives it a more driver focused and a harsher ride. You can basically feel every bump, but the car isn't as soft, so it doesn't sort of bounce off. It just sort of stays consistent on the surface and can be a bit of a hard ride, but that's only when you've got PASM activated. It's beautiful on great roads, but not good at all on these roads that we're on right now, because they definitely need overhauling. Now on the outside, you'll find that the upper part of the windscreen here is tinted. That is from factory. The side door mirrors are both heated and electrically adjustable. And as mentioned already, the 997 really evokes the lines and the shape of what the earlier 911s were meant to look like. So let me deactivate PASM, because it was really getting on my nerve for a moment, because this road isn't the best of roads. And we're going to spin around and talk to you about what the interior is like on this car, and why the interior of this is probably to my desired spec. Okay, on to the point of interior. Let's just start on the point of what mileage is done. This has done 83,675 miles, still below the average UK miles per year that people would normally do in a car. And the 911s were always designed with a view of practicality. The fact that the engine is mounted at the back allows Porsche to have 2 seats at the back, which at best work extremely well. For children and for adults it can be quite uncomfortable, because you haven't got enough headroom to sit comfortably. Spec wise, this has got the full leather or the full extended leather package, Alcantara roof headlining, and it's got this beautiful and still works to this day sunroof 15 years later. Credit to Porsche for making things that outlast probably any other manufacturer out there, because 70% of the 911s or Porsches, as a matter of fact, ever produced are still on the road to this day, which is why in some ways they command a premium when you do want to buy it. But you know, they will, as I said, outlast any other manufacturer out there. My favorite spec on this car, well, my two favorite bit of spec on this car is definitely the comfort adaptive seats, because the comfort adaptive seats allows you to kind of adjust them to the absolute millimeter. So if I just really need to get into a comfortable mode here on a motorway, I'm able to adjust it without having to have, you know, manual operating handles to be moving the seats about, which is extremely handy. And you know, that's also adaptive in the sense that the upholstery you can adjust so that your back and, you know, your sides are sitting into the car as comfortably as it can be. And then the second is sports steering wheel. I mean, this is one of those things that you're most in contact with, and it's gotta be good. It's gotta feel, you know, as part of the furniture as part of everything that you're constantly in contact with on the car, and having a sports steering wheel that is wrapped in leather is extremely comfortable both in the summer and in the winter. And I should have said 3 of my favorite things in this car, but I said 2 at the beginning because I completely forgot about the gear stick here. This is in aluminium and leather, and that is spec'd from factory like this. I've normally seen spec'd manual in aluminium and leather from factory, either in the GTS or on the C4S. Having it in the Carrera S makes it all the better. It's so engaging and so comfortable and lovely to hold, and the combination of the aluminium and leather works exquisitely well, and I don't think anything can really beat it. Perfect. So in the exterior you find the 3.8 litre engine, and as mentioned, this is still the indirect fuel injected engine, and that means the fuel is not fed into the combustion chamber directly as you would find it on the DFI. It's actually fed into the air intake manifold and then into the combustion chamber. You've got these beautifully shaped upgraded LED lights on the rear, and I love how the spoiler actually lifts up, and when that spoiler lifts up you actually have an additional brake light here, so absolutely phenomenal. And to the back you've got the twin tail sports exhaust, so on either side, and it sounds phenomenal. You've got the rear wiper as an optional. You've got the rear looking exquisitely beautiful on the Carrera S, these beautifully shaped arches and the lines, the 19-inch lobster claw alloys. You've got the PPF to sort of, obviously because of the arches, to protect the side of the vehicle, the sunroof here from the top, the side door mirrors which are heated and electrically adjustable. The upper part of the windscreen is tinted. The xenon headlights with headlamp washers, these have been upgraded to LEDs, as well as the side indicator lights. I'm going to pop the front boot open. Having the engine actually mounted at the back gives it this phenomenal level of practicality, because you get this lovely boot space at the back, and this could easily swallow a couple of weekend bags for your holiday. And this is probably one of the appeals of the 911, because you not only have a lot of practical space in a sports car, but at the same time you've got the option of having a 2+2 layout. And now if you come into the interior, I mean, you're really welcomed by the Carrera S badge. The comfort seats, which are electrically adjustable, so you've got these buttons here on the side at the bottom with the adaptive sports with the adaptive button as well, so you can actually adjust the upholstery here here on the sides, and you can actually get a really nice, lovely, snug fit to when you're sitting into the car, and you can really adjust it to the exact millimeter when you're adjusting the seats. The sports steering wheel, which is, again, these two combined work extremely well and definitely my favorite. And then the gear shifter being in aluminium and leather combination, which is what you tend to normally find in the GTS or in the Carrera 4S, and you still got to spec it in them. It makes it as if it's just been shipped from heaven. Honestly, I don't normally find this sort of a combination, and having the sunroof again as an optional can be quite pleasant, especially when you're not just going out there to thrash your car and you want to enjoy your car. It can be a fantastic option. It's got Bose navigation, radio, and the PASM button is there at the bottom. So all in all, from a spec point of view, this car has everything you really need. I mean, I've missed out the Alcantara roof headlining, But other than that, everything else is really touched and covered, and nothing is actually forgotten or missed in any way, form or shape. The only thing I probably forgot to discuss is if we can actually go to the rear engine one more time. From a technical performance point of view, that 3.8 litre flat 6 boxer engine produces 350 brake horsepower, 400 Newton meters of torque. For a sports car, the 0 to 60 is done in 4.8 seconds, which is superbly quick. So, and from an MPG point of view, it will give you anywhere between 20 to 35 MPG. But who buys a Porsche 911 with a view of it producing good MPG? And let's just actually get out there and drive it a little bit more and give you more of an idea of what it's really like. The instrument cluster here is got the silver surround to it at the back, and you still get these the 5 separate views here. This harks back to the early 911s, and over the years they've always made subtle little changes with what any of these styles actually did. Missed that hump there. I know on the early 911s, some of them were actually a clock, and the sweet spot of these 911s really is between 5,000 to 6,000 RPM, and that's when you really actually get to make the engine produce this awesome, fantastic sound that you tend to normally get from a flat 6 naturally aspirated